My name is Nick Shell. All I ever talk about is hair loss, and I want to be known as someone who completely not only appreciates but celebrates diversity. All right? So yesterday, I hadn't done this in if ever, but I went through and was looking through my subscribers. Now we're whatever, 2,200, and I'm looking through and kind of seeing thumbnails and just trying to understand my audience a little bit better. I sort of know the age group and obviously the gender, but I was thinking, as a arguably white, there it is, arguably. In every video I shoot in this flannel shirt, I'm going to say arguably, I suppose. I don't know if I haven't already. Okay. But as a mostly white guy, I'm noticing that most of my subscribers are either also of European descent or Middle Eastern descent. It's a fact. Middle Eastern men are watching my videos. And if you're Middle Eastern and watching this, as you may or may not know, I recently got the MyHeritage DNA test, and it came back that I am part Middle Eastern on my mom's side. One of her grandparents was mostly Middle Eastern. And then they married someone who was Jewish, and then they left Italy where they were and came here. So I am definitely, absolutely, undeniably part Middle Eastern, part Jewish as well. I'm equally as Jewish. But of course I am also a quarter Mexican. So there are some things. And I actually am 1% African. My mom's 2% African, and I think that came through the Sephardic Jewish side. If you go back far enough in my family tree, there's going to be an African man or woman in there somewhere. I'm not claiming to be African American, but I'm just showing you, if I didn't celebrate diversity, then I would instantly be a hypocrite. I have to, it's part of who I am to begin with. I'm not just 100% Scottish or something like that. My family history, what parts of it I do understand, is very complex and very diverse. So with that being said, I want to point out the fact that I celebrate our diversity, but it seems that we're mainly either men of European descent or mainly men of Middle Eastern descent as far as who's subscribing and who's commenting. Very seldom have I had any guy that's of African descent, whether he's from Africa or in the Middle East but have African descent, or an African American. I wish that wasn't the case. I wish there were more men of African descent. I don't know what to do different other than to become African American and know what I'm talking about when it comes to African men and hair. I'm pretty useless on that, but that's not really even important anyway. What I talk about here is men's hair loss. I find it interesting that men of African descent aren't showing up on this channel and subscribing and commenting. So I'm trying to figure that out. That's really what this video is. This is me trying to figure out, why aren't men of African descent watching my channel and subscribing and commenting, whereas men of European and Middle Eastern are? Well, the obvious first thing I would think is perhaps men of European descent and Middle Eastern descent, either way, are more likely to lose their hair. And it's a bigger part of their cultural identity, whether as Middle Eastern men or whether as men of European descent, who are also quite likely to be able to grow a solid beard even earlier in life. We've established those things. I've also obviously established, therefore, that Asian men are less likely to grow this robust beard, but less likely to lose their hair at an earlier age. But something we haven't really talked about is African American men, African men, Middle Eastern men that are also African. We don't talk about it because they're not showing up in the comments. Men of African descent aren't showing up. But I want to talk about it. I want to be relevant to men who are of African descent as well. But for the fact that they're not showing up and not watching my videos, this is my theory, and I can only really go off of what you're telling me in the comments here. Here's my theory. Culturally, for a man of African descent to go bald, if he does, it's not a big deal. Comparatively speaking to men of Middle Eastern, Jewish, white, European descent. It's more important to them, but it's not that important to African American men. Now I know we can all immediately bring up LeBron James. Even I'm familiar with LeBron James spraying on the hair trend, whatever he's doing, I don't know. People know about that. But here's my theory on why men of African descent aren't watching my channel. I think just as culturally, as I said, all the European, Jewish, Middle Eastern guys, it bothers them, and yet they have this beard trade-off. My theory is that men of African descent don't have to worry about it. I've said before in a video a while back, I said a blessing that men of African descent have when it comes to hair, two things. No matter what age an African descent man guy is, he can look good in a mustache. If I grow a mustache, it looks cool in an ironic way, in a funny way. You're gonna laugh. You see a black guy with a mustache, he looks cool. He can pull it off every time. I've never seen a guy of African descent that doesn't look good in a mustache. Also, I've never seen a guy of African descent who didn't look good with a completely shaved head. And I don't mean buzz cut like number 2, 1.5 guard. I mean bald shaved. Like Darius Rucker comes to mind immediately. Like just every guy that is black that has a bald head just by default looks good. So I don't know if that's part of the reason why guys that are African are not watching my channel. Maybe, I just wonder. I wonder if it's because it means less to African descent men losing their hair. It's just something they don't care about because ultimately they're gonna look good bald. And I get it that not every white guy is gonna look good with a completely bald head or a buzz head. I get that. Some people are gonna look better than others. And listening to you guys, you're telling me that I'm gonna be a guy that's gonna be able to pull it off. I've got the right features to make it work. But this is me positively stereotyping men of African descent. They just all seem to look good with bald. They look good with hair, of course. It's funny, I'm almost like prejudiced in a positive way towards African men. I just think that by default, they're just so naturally good looking. And so they can pull off the mustache, they can pull off the shaved head, they can pull off all kinds of hairstyles. Whether it's braids, whether it's afro, whether it's a tight crop, whatever it is. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and predict YouTube's not gonna let me monetize this video because I'm talking so much about a race that I'm mostly not. But my theory is African men are good-looking men, and therefore, of all races, they don't need hair to look good to begin with. So when they are going bald, they're shaving it off, they're growing the beard, and they're looking sharp either way. Please prove me wrong, but that's my theory on why men of African descent don't even show up to watch a channel about hair loss, knowing that it's the only hair loss channel on YouTube that addresses it from a psychological point of view. Okay, comments, teach me.